Hey everyone, Max at 343 Labs here. We're a music production school based in New York City, Berlin, and online. And today I'd like to show you a clip by one of our instructors, John Selways, where he demonstrates and gives you an overview of Izotope's powerful sample-based spectral synthesizer Iris 2. Now this clip is taken from 343 TV, which airs right here almost every day of the week. And if you like what you see, don't forget to subscribe below, and let's get into it.
This is the initial idea for the show, was to take a look at Iris 2. And this is like literally not the first, but the second time I've actually tried to do anything with it. And it's pretty cool. It's a sampler. I mean, first of all, it's mainly a sampler. And it's a simple, easy to use sampler, actually, that sounds good. The way it's set up. All right, we'll ignore this crazy looking display here with the squiggles on it for a second. If you look on the upper right here, you've got 4 slots. I don't know if that's what Izotope calls them, but I'm calling them slots. So you can layer 4 samples, right? And each sample has its own modulation, tuning, sample playback modes, tuning, etc. Right? And then from there, it gets all mixed together. There's a filter. There are send effects or master effects, which you can have one or the other. Right? It doesn't seem that you can do both send effects and master effects. As far as I know, there's just a switch here that you have to choose, right? And on the bottom left, you have modulators. You have 5 LFOs, 5 envelopes. You have your external MIDI inputs like key tracking, velocity, aftertouch, and mod wheel, and then there are 8 macros which you can assign. This interface looks pretty cool. You can resize it. I try not to resize it too much because I've had issues with the screen refreshing and not loading correctly, and I can't see something, so I'm not going to do that right now. But you can, say, pop out the macro controls separately, which is really cool. You can pop out all the modulation. So yeah, it's a pretty nice, flexible interface that we have here. Tuseth asks, would it be correct to call it a spectral sampler? Yeah, you could call it that. Yeah, I mean, semantics, right? It's a sampler, it's a spectral synthesizer, but it's also a spectral sampler. I'm not sure what the difference between those are, but it's spectral. All right. So, So let's get to the elephant in the room, and on the upper left here, this is the spectral part. You can see where all these little squiggles are. When you load in a sample, first, what's also really cool about this is it auto-detects pitch. So you don't have to set the root note manually, like in a lot of samplers, right? I know there's other samplers that do this, but it is a really nice thing, especially if you don't have perfect pitch, where you can just drop in a sample and it will identify the fundamental. It'll try. Sometimes it gets it wrong because samples can be noisy or weird or detuned or harmonic. But it will try to figure out what the fundamental pitch of that is, and then it will assign the root note so that when you play the note on the keyboard, when you play a C, you hear a C. It's in tune and even hopefully in the right octave. It really depends though, but it does a pretty good job of that. So that it's fast. You know, you can just drop samples in and start playing with them without having to worry about the tuning some of the time, which is very useful. All right, let's actually just listen to this sound for a second. I came up with this kind of rhythmic pattern thing, kind of techno-y, sort of musical / percussive. All right, and actually the level is low right now. Why? Because the shaper is off. I'm doing a kind of sidechain ducking effect with the shaper. Let's hear that with the beat. See, I'm already dancing. That's a good sign. Dominic Frechette says, I'm really looking forward to the new convolution reverb in 11. Yeah, we should take a look at the new hybrid reverb, I think. I think I have one in here somewhere already. So what's going on in this sound? so there's a couple of layers. All of the tonal variation, most of the tonal variation you're hearing in there is selecting, and this is the spectral part, selecting different parts of the spectrum in that sample. And it kind of plays, you can select all of them over time. There's some different controls. I won't want to mess up this sound yet. But so basically I just used this, there's like this little magic wand selection tool, like you're in Photoshop or something, and you just go in there and click, and it'll find a bunch of frequencies that are together. And like right there, you can see those straight lines there. If you see straight solid lines going across, that's like a identifiable pitch. So what it'll do is if you magic wand that, it'll try to select all of the frequencies that are at that, in that range, that are those harmonics, right? And so you can kind of pick shapes out of it. And then if you select different little bits and pieces of the spectrum over time, you'll hear those sounds changing. Let's actually, maybe, and that's kind of what I did here. I did some kind of free drawing. There's like a paintbrush, so I made little loops here. I did some straight lines. This was all kind of random as it was playing. Now the rhythm is coming from the sample. You can see in the sample there's like stripes. So you can see rhythm over time. And that's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are all 16th notes, basically. This loop that I'm playing has a 16th note rhythm in it already. And I had to tune it a little bit, fine-tune it to get it to play in the right tempo. So actually, let's mute the hi-hat for a second. That's one thing it doesn't do, as even though it like will automatically detect the pitch, it doesn't do like time stretching, warping, like automatically fitting a beat into time. It'd be amazing if it did. Maybe Iris 3, they can add that or something. But so in order to get that in time, I had to find a note that was close to the tempo, and then fine tune it to get it just right. And that's old school sampling. Back in the day before we had warping or recycle or automatic beat detection, you had to trim your sample perfectly and tune it to fit your tempo. All right, so you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna mute those channels right now, and let's try this spectral experiment. All right, so when you have an empty slot, you have the sample browser. We can click preview to play the sample that we select. Another nice thing about Iris 2 is it has a very huge library of different kinds of samples that you can add to it. It doesn't install them in the beginning. You can download them separately and just pick the ones that you like. So it's, you know, if you didn't miss the free giveaway of this, just to get the sample library was awesome, right? For nothing. They are still doing some specials right now. I think they've got like a $50 package that includes Iris 2 and a bunch of other cool plugins from Izotope that if you like this, it's a no-brainer because it comes with all this other really cool stuff. Anyway, these are just some of the basic ones that are installed when you first put it on your system. Lots of strange noises to play with. All right. It can be really interesting to play with noise in this thing because it's got this spectral filter thing going on. You can find harmony in noise because you could just pick out specific frequencies. So I might try to do that. Go into. All right, that's total. It's sidechained rain right now. Let's load up the rain. All right, so we have just a bunch of noise. And let's turn the shaper off, actually. In fact, let's actually clear the mapping so I can control the volume. All right, so now we're just hearing rain. And we're hearing that sample repeated every 2 beats. So it's giving it a very simple rhythm. And we can zoom in and just, it's a long, long sample, right? We're just using a little bit of it. We could go in and select a different part of it. It's a little louder, right? We can move that selection around. All right, I'm going to go there because it's louder. Now let's see what else we can do here. You can change that window so you can hear like I'm sweeping up and down. That's another thing this doesn't do, and there may be some other instruments out there that do, but I can't modulate all this spectral stuff. You're really just stuck with selecting a range, but that can still be cool. Like let's actually clear this up again. Let's try this magic wand tool and see what happens. So now we're getting... That sounds weird. So you're hearing these little kind of... We're hearing like... I'm doing... It's kind of like additive synthesis now. I'm adding in lots of modulating sine waves somehow. So you can find in noise, you can find frequencies and noise that we hear as melody in a way. Or strange modulations. Let's clear this out again. And free draw a little bit. We can change the size of our brush. All right, go back to the beginning. Let's zoom in. So it's really great for making weird techno noise, right? Just already you can come up with strange loops in a second and layer this. Then you have 3 other slots to layer other types of textures with. If I want to do straight ranges of frequencies, I can use this frequency selection tool. This is getting weird, isn't it? All right. You can also kind of... it's birds. So we're just sculpting out of that noise. It's so techno and weird. I love it. Can transpose that up. All right, so that's like I'm starting another weird hard techno track with this strange bird-like spectral thing that happened just by accident. This kind of playing with this synth, this sampler, whatever it is, for the first time, totally lines up with Abe had his concept of like accidents and taking risks, and he had his conversation with Neil yesterday, but yeah, he started out talking about like setting yourself up to experiment and come up with crazy stuff. This is definitely a type of synthesis that gives you that right away. Oh, hello. My daughter is sneaking into the frame. Say hi. Nara, are you here to learn about techno and spectral synthesis? Okay, they can't hear you, by the way. So why am I even asking you questions? So seriously, I'll talk to you later. Nice to see you. Enjoy. Go have fun. Dance. She's doing her dance class online, I think. I think that's what's going on. So she's excited. It's about time for a pause in the music anyway. Let's go back to the chat and acknowledge Loom. Is it Loom or Lume? Or I think it's Loom. Loving these videos. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I'm really glad that somebody out there is loving them. And that's why I'm doing this. And that's why 343 Labs is here to share what we do with all of you. And during these difficult times, we have to say it again and again, we're all in this together. We're globally dealing with this pandemic, and we're not all able to connect in the same ways. And this is one of the new ways we have of reaching out, of expanding our community, and letting everybody know about the school and what we do, the classes we have. I do Ableton Live production classes, sort of general music production classes. And then I also have my own course, Synthesis and Sound Design for Producers, where I like to, teach about the different possibilities with synthesis and sound design from a musical and composition perspective and a practical perspective. So learning how to listen, learning how to hear the details, learning like an artist knows his colors and his brushes. that you're aware of, like what type of synthesis is going to work for my style, and how am I going to get my ideas out, and demystifying different types of synthesis, for example. So it's not a beginner course, but it's not a super advanced course either, I will say. It's somewhere in between. It's probably, if my course is for you if you're already comfortable to a certain point with making music, but maybe like you've just been using presets and you want to go beyond it, or you want to get deeper into how certain types of synthesis works from a creative perspective. So if that's you, I highly recommend that you look into my synthesis and sound design for producers course at 343 Labs. It's mainly online, probably staying online for now. And keep your eye on the chat here. As I speak, I see that there's a link there for a new synth class I have starting tomorrow. So if you're ready to jump, we have a special going on right now. I think we've got discounts. So now's the time. Jump on in and join us and explore synthesis from, you know, a different perspective. It's not about like recipes for how to make a sound, although if you ask me and I know it, I'm going to share it with you. But it's more for me about helping you guys figure out how to get there yourself. So instead of just saying this is how you do a techno bass from A to Z, right? Or 1 to 10 in these steps, and that makes one sound. I'd rather teach you all of to think, what tool do I need and to do that sound that I like, and then you figure out the steps because you have the tools already and you have the ear and the practice to hear those small details that make it work. Cool. Yeah, Sarah, thanks. She's sweet, my daughter. And Harris Nickel, you were my teacher back in the Dubspot days. Love seeing you are still teaching. Thank you very much, Harris. And I'm glad that, I guess you're still around making music and following along with the new stuff. So glad to have you. TWD Industries says, does this also have an eraser tool to remove frequencies that you've drawn in? Yes, it does. It's like, I don't like those birds. Or let's say I don't like the high-pitched birds. So I'm going to click on the eraser, and then I can, whoa, that's really big. Let's make that smaller. That sounds really kind of cool and weird at the same time, doesn't it? So yeah, you could totally like erase out of it, poke holes in it. Actually, no, you can't. That doesn't work. you have to do something first. It's cool that you can draw a shape, and if you like that shape, you can just grab it and move it. Let's do some of those little chirps again. Not working so well anymore. The title of this video should have been like, how to make techno bird loops. Sorry. All right, I'm gonna get off of that sound and get back to the other stuff going on here. I could just mute that and go back to originally what I was doing, which I think I like a lot better. All right, so once you get the crazy spectral thing that you like, you know, you can layer stuff together, obviously. So, all right, so this was my first layer, doing the sequence kind of thing, and then I added a kind of a more simple bleepy element to it. As a layer, and they're at different levels. And then once I got these layers together, you treat it subtractively, like almost any sampler. Once you have the sample set up, you can run it through filters, you can modulate stuff. It is a subtractive synthesizer. And that's how I think about sampling when I'm making a sound, is that instead of an oscillator, I have a sample player, right? And the sample is generating the sound that an oscillator would. And then from there on, I treat it like any other synth that's got a subtractive signal flow. So So it's real easy to assign envelopes. This is envelope 1, and envelope 1 is assigned to right there, the cutoff. So all I did was click on that and drag it to that handle, whatever it's called, destination. And each parameter has 3 possible modulators, right? Anyway, so that one's there already. And you click and drag up and down. This is pretty common to plug-in interfaces nowadays. Click and drag, and then there's something that lets you drag up and down to change the amount of modulation. That sounds cool. All right, so I thought about automating, modulating the decay. And, you know, this is an Ableton Live thing that has not changed in ages, but anytime you have these are already here, but I'll get rid of them so you can, if you ever have a situation where you've got a third-party plugin and there's nothing there yet for automation, just click configure. It tells you to do it, and then click on the parameter that you want to be able to automate or assign MIDI to through Live. Ableton Basics with John Selways. All right, show automation. Let's make a nice long oh, there it is. See, this time I got it. I guess it depends on, I should have looked at this before. I was talking before about Ableton Live having automation or modulation. It looks like some devices don't have modulation as an option. Why is that, Ableton Live? Anyway, this is what I was looking for before, was modulation as opposed to automation. But anyway, for now though, I'm just going to stick with the usual automation, unlink the loop, set the length, I don't know, 8 bars maybe, and let's get that increasing. Actually, let's go even longer. Go back down again, why not? All right, let's move on to the next sound that I had. Now this was starting with the preset. This was like, I had actually in my head a melodic idea that I thought would be more like kind of an acidy thing, right? So these are the notes that I drew in, and this was literally me like composing. Like I thought of the melody and then I drew in the notes, right? So I started with this. Oops, wrong one. And of course, it doesn't sound acidy at all now because, you know, I started trying to make some kind of weird spectral acid sound, and then it got complicated, and I thought, okay, it wasn't working. I wasn't happy. Let's just preset browse. And that's another fun thing if you're a preset person, that you just have a random button that will randomly load whatever preset from whatever presets you have installed. And that can be a fun sort of inspiration when you're stuck. So I don't want to mess up the sound now, but all I did to find this particular sound was click random a couple times, and then as soon as I heard something cool, I kept it. But then I went in and tried to modify it a little bit. So this sound had some weird layers in it, which I wanted to get rid of. So, for example, it has these little clicky, which is actually, it's okay, it's percussive. But it sounds out of time a little bit. Like it sounds a little bit late. I wonder if I can move that over somehow. Or find another part of it. All right, if you do something you don't like it, I love plugins, especially complex plugins that have undos. There you go, it's gone. So you can get really specific with the sound. Like you can go in and add or delete something very small, to customize it a little bit. Let's see if I can give it a little. All right, so you hear how it's just making those subtle little changes. It's really powerful. But I like just the smoother sort of organ-like layer of this. So let's keep that. Looks like I'm going to have to undo a bunch of stuff. I've messed it up. There we go. Let's hear how that sounds with the beat. I like that. Yeah, TWE Industries asks, do they have any wavetable style sweeps? I haven't gone through all of the samples yet, but there is a lot in there, and there's some packs that I haven't downloaded yet. So there are some cool moving, modulating sort of things. So I would be surprised if there weren't some sort of wavetable-like sounds in there. Okay. Let's look at some effects now. So I made a rack here. Whoa. Which adds another layer on top of this synth. Come on, open up. There we go. Right, so this actually started as a preset, but it doesn't sound anything like the preset anymore because I completely modified it. So basically, this is one of the new effects in Live 11. This is the... Wait, what is it again? Which one is it? It's the Spectral Resonator. If you're familiar with Corpus, it's similar to that. Corpus is it's a physical modeling-based resonator. And this is like a way more complex version of that in a way, if I get it right. And someone, if you're a live expert and you think I'm wrong, tell me. I want to be corrected. But to my ears and but based on what I see it doing, it's a different kind of, it's similar to what Corpus is doing. And also there's the resonator effect, right? So they have some things to do with each other in terms of what's going on here with the sound. And what's happening here is it's basically like a spectral filter or a resonating spectral filter, and you have control over the number of different frequencies inside of it up to, well, 256, and as little as 1. If you have 1 harmonic, it's just going to be a sine wave. So you can see that's 3. As I add more harmonics, we're getting more overtones on top. It's going to get brighter and brighter. And then there are a couple of different, there's a chorus wander. Let's see what they describe these types of modulation modes as. So you can have no modulation. Chorus applies triangle wave modulation at different frequencies. Wander ramps to random levels at random intervals. And granular randomly triggers exponential envelopes, right? So it's doing different types of modulations to all of those resonating filters. And right now I have it on granular, and you're hearing it kind of spread out into individual little grains of frequencies that are happening. And you can see there, if I switch it to wander, it sounds smoother, or chorus. And there's no modulation at all. Anyway, so whatever signal you feed into this, it's going to make it ring. And then you can tune, you can transpose the frequency of it. You can shift the overtones up and down with the shift control. And stretch is spreading them closer apart or bringing them back closer together. All right, I'm going to actually, I like that. I'm going to keep it. Let's start from a default and see what this thing does. So normally by default, it has its own internal pitch. and you just choose what that frequency is. Right, so now it's whatever signal's coming into it, you know, it's resonating in this filter, and you can tune it to match whatever key you're in. There's an envelope. How long it rings. After it starts ringing, you can have it ring longer. It can be droning, basically. So it's kind of tracking the amplitude of the input. We can... Right. That's not doing anything right now. I wonder why. All right, so that's stretch. Just that is techno. Gosh. Okay, so that's just set at one frequency, and you can go by a rate of hertz, or you can choose a musical note to more easily tune it. What I was doing, though, was I set the mode to MIDI, and now I can send any MIDI that's going on in my session into this, and it will follow that pitch. So I had it set to the track that was playing my kind of organy, chordy melody that I found accidentally. So now that's them. You can hear that there's the audio coming in, right? And then, you know, it's kind of playing at a different interval, so I want to transpose it so it sounds more in key. Make it brighter with the shift. Play around with the relationship between all of those frequencies with the stretch. You can try out the different modulation. We can also modulate the pitch. And finally, at the end here, we have a unison mode where you can double, quadruple. We could go up to 8 voices. All right, so I've kind of messed that up, but let's turn that off and go back to where I had it before, which is where I want it to be. So I've got it transposed up a couple octaves higher. It's kind of got this bell-like ringing tone on top, and it's adding a brighter layer. That was one of the things about this sound that I wanted to change, was this sample doesn't have any more high frequencies in it, and this synth doesn't have a way for me to like modulate the sound, at least I haven't found it yet, to add the higher harmonics, like if I was using some kind of FM modulation or other type of audio rate modulation to create frequencies that weren't there. So this is a way to do it. I can have this resonator pitched up higher and following that melody, and then it's giving it another kind of sparkly, shiny layer on top. Right, and the next thing I thought was, let's put some space on that. So here was the first time that we're trying Live's hybrid reverb. Right, and the first thing I thought was, is this the same convolution that comes with Max for Live? And no. All of these impulse responses, I believe, are new. And these texture ones are really cool because they're not like big washy rooms. They kind of they're more subtle, right? And so right now we're listening to just the convolution. In the middle here, you can choose whether you're going from the convolution into the algorithmic reverb, or whether you're layering them in parallel, or just the algorithm, which is over here. or just the convolution, which is what I have right now. Let's hear just noise flutter, whatever that is. It sounds good on this sound. It's got some different vintage settings, which I suppose must be emulating different types of old digital reverb effects. Very handy to have a bass mono switch in a reverb. If you're putting reverb on low frequency sounds, being able to sum the lows to mono so that you don't cause, as mentioned earlier, phase problems like in the kick and things like that. When you put reverb on a kick, you want to be careful about putting too much reverb on like the sub frequencies of that kick because of these phase issues. So right there, you have a nice mono button, and whenever this would be a really great reverb to experiment with putting on a kick. This sound, I'm not worried about it. It doesn't have any subs, so. Let's check on the chat real quick. That organ is lit, Dominic Frechette says. I agree. Thank you. And A2Sith says a bit Detroity kind of. Yeah, I kind of lean that way lately. I mean, always. I love Detroit-inspired techno. It has been a huge inspiration to me, as it has been to many. And I like when, you can be futuristic and techno and musical and soulful and use more sophisticated harmony and not be trancey or melodic techno or house. Like there's this, it's another direction, which I really like a lot. So might have gone a little overboard on the effects for this. It sounds good dry too. Maybe I just need to address the balance. Maybe there's just, like there's the dry chain in the audio effect rack. Just need to bring it down a little bit. Okay, better. It sounds really far away and wide now in my headphones. This is fun. Another thing that I made just a little bit of use of, and it's such a nice subtle thing, is the new probability controls in the MIDI clips. You can see here down at the bottom, velocity and probability. You can turn those on and off or hide them completely. And, I'm sure some of you have seen these, new Live 11 videos that have been out this week that already talked about this, but still worth pointing out that I have selected just these high notes, right? Oh. And reduced the chance of them playing at all. So just these guys. And, if it's at 100, they're going to play every time. And if I bring that down, you're going to skip sometimes. So maybe a little more than that. Maybe I want one of those to play more often, so bring that up a little higher. What happens if I only want the first note to play sometimes? Yeah, let's see how that works. Let's bring that down to, 60%. Really easily add probability to anything. There were other ways to do this before, using different plugin devices, but this just totally streamlines it. And especially for techno, like where you have these repeating phrases over and over again, to have these subtle variations every now and then can go a long way into keeping things interesting and engaging. Like your brain kind of, even if it's so subtle that it's just like one note that disappears every now and then, your brain recognizes that and hears it as evolution. And it keeps things interesting, and a 1 bar or 2 bar loop becomes interesting for a whole minute because of these subtle little changes that are happening. I mean, I could do that in the hi-hat too, right? Like maybe I put in like a fill, a little roll or something, and then make those so they barely ever play. And so it'll just add in these occasional extra notes. Make them a little quieter and reduce the probability of those pretty low, and hopefully we won't have to wait for too long before we hear them. There you go. And, you know, those of you who are familiar with using hardware sequencers, like the Electron stuff, for sure, or modular sequencers, there's a lot of modern sequencers that incorporate this kind of probability on a step basis. So this is where you get to easily do it in live. I think it's great. Stylistically, totally appropriate. Cosmic Chase saying, the bells. Oh my God, it's like too many bells. Is it bells? It is organ. It's organs and bells today on Techno Saturday. Spectral organs and bells. And then this guy, whatever this is. So I have one more sound. We're running down the clock now, 1:56. There was another little subtle modulation, and I did in this sound that I forgot to get. I forgot to mention. So that kind of tone that comes in at the beginning. Is a really slow pitch bend of the pitch is just going up really slowly up and down with this LFO that's running at like 0.013 hertz, super slow. And it's just doing a little bit of modulation of the fine tuning. And it's really hypnotic if you listen to that. Just this with the kick drum, it's like an old Panasonic track or something. Miko Vaino and those guys. It's all in the subtleties for me. All right, so the last sound is, I needed some kind of bass. I'm not 100% sold on this sound yet. It's kind of like a donkey stab, like it's kind of boom, right? But it sounds good. And again, I'm using the Spectral resonator to kind of give a little bit of special sauce. It's fine without it, but it's so straight, right? And again, this is a preset. And this is a good example of how precisely you can construct sounds with these layered spectral sample slots here. So there's kind of the mid-range filtered one, and then there's like a little transient. It sounds like a little hi-hat. It's just a little tick. It's so subtle. And then I think that might be it. There's nothing there. What's that one? Just a sine wave. Just like this is your sub. You can get really, so I guess aside from the spectral part of it, what this plugin is really good at doing is layered sample design. And, you know, I'm going to revisit this at some point and go in and try to make some more complex layered sounds, but I need to spend some more time with it before I would present that, because this is really, this is a first look today.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget, 343 TV goes live daily right here on our YouTube channel. And if you want to take a course with us or just want to join our community, you can find more information at 343labs.com or 343labs.de for our German website. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.